Hello and welcome back to Up the Villa podcast. This is our preview for Everton in the Carabao Cup. I don't know where I am at the minute. I've got episodes here, there, and everywhere. I've got competitions here, there, and everywhere. I don't know where to look at times, but I'm joined by Ivan. Great to have you back on the channel, mate. How are you?
Yeah, really good, Luke. Yeah, nice to speak again. It's been a while, but yeah, the games are certainly coming thick and fast now, aren't they? It's but that's great, isn't it? That's where we want to be.
Yeah, definitely. We want to be in as many competitions as possible, pushing ourselves. So what have you made of Villa's start of the season then, being as I've not spoke to you? Averaging 2 points a game, 12 points. We're on 55 points for the calendar year in fourth place. So we are continuing our form from last season. So, plenty of positives. But what have you made of everything so far then?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still a real positive start, isn't it? And I think that we can unpick certain kind of games and aspects of games, and I think it would be wrong not to say there's been a few sort of disappointing moments. But I think when you look at it as a whole and you think of that following on from last season and that very quick progress that we saw to finish seventh, I think that my general feeling has been that was kind of that's the level that the season started at. And I think I wasn't particularly expecting us to kind of be winning every game. And I think that he's still finding out really where he wants to go and kind of certain aspects against certain teams. I mean, I think I've really enjoyed the European games, and I mean it was great to be at the second leg of the Hibs game and kind of be back in those kind of European nights. And I think that again though, that's a great example of how he's having to sort of find a way really, and it's not going to be as easy as just thinking, well, Unai Emery has got a great European record, so it's all going to work magically, isn't it? And I think that obviously Warsaw was a disappointment. But I think, again, lessons learned, and look forward to sort of Mostar's back at Villa Park. But yeah, I mean, I'd have taken this all day long. I think 12 points, some really good wins. I think yesterday was really important in terms of how we kind of reacted to Warsaw, but equally, beginning to build that momentum, because that's how you move up the league, isn't it? Back-to-back wins. So to do that was important, I think. So yeah. Positive in all, Luke, I think.
Yeah, very, very good. Leads us on then to the Carabao Cup, and it's a tricky one with me with this on how, and we'll get into the team selection on how strong we go. But for me, if I had to rank this competition in Villa's priority this season, I would put it fourth. I'd put it fourth on the list. I think I'd go with Prem, then I'd go with the Europa, FA Cup and Carabao Cup. So that's the way I would view this competition.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it? Are you thinking we're going strong? Are we, what's the vibe?
I think so. I mean, I think, yeah, if you were to rank the competitions, it may well be fourth. But the only thing I'd say that, possibly to counter that is that although it might be fourth in priority, in terms of the potential to go sort of deep in it, it's probably up there because there's not that many games, obviously already bypassed a round. So I think, he's got to go for it really. And I think he will ultimately. And I don't think he wants to lose games at any football club, I guess. But, I think he does see that potential of going deep in competitions. I think that the challenge of Wednesday is a bit more complicated than probably it looked like when the draw was made. I think that, on the back of spanking and 4-0 at Villa Park, people probably thought, wow, this is a gimme. They found a bit of form. I think Everton will go strong. I think that they want a bit of momentum after the, good win against Brentford. I think they'll kind of go for it. And I think that will possibly alter where Emery goes. But we do have a squad, Luke, that he can go strong. Like I don't think we're not going to wheel Courtney House out of the injury room at Bodymore, are we? So I think that I think he's going to go for it, and and I would agree with that, because I think that I agree with you in a sense that fourth is the fourth priority. But as I say, it as a potential one to kind of go deep in, it's up there, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that this leads us on to sort of like the Villa lineup and what we are going to go with. And I think there was a lot of chat after the Legia Warsaw game of he shouldn't have rotated for the first one. He should have gone as strong as possible. Then the counteract to that was he then has to win at Chelsea, otherwise he looks stupid in the week.
Yeah.
You get all of this, but I think the fundamental thing that my point of view on this is we've got a squad, and I think unlike years gone by, we have to use the squad, and it's not a negative if we do make a couple of changes in this game, because the squad needs to be utilised. And you mentioned Everton and the way that you think that they're going to go into it, and they've had an indifferent start to the season, really. They've been quite poor in some games, especially the Arsenal game. They couldn't string like 3 passes together, and then they rock up at the G Tech at Brentford, and they're putting a real solid, strong performance. And
it was a very short
day.
dice-like performance, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which we haven't seen, and I just think he'll be keen to continue that momentum on Wednesday. So I think that's why they might perhaps want to maybe be a bit more positive than we maybe anticipated.
So Villa changes then. Where would you see? Because you said we'd go quite strong. Where do you think we would maybe look to change certain players?
I think to sort of just go back to the Warsaw changes, I think first, because I think that tells us probably a little bit about where he's going to go. I think if you looked at when that Warsaw team came out, that Zaniolo was in there, Duran, which a lot of people wanted, Tielemans, a lot of people were saying, well, this is the sort of game where these players can play. I think the issue was obviously the defensive changes, and obviously it's easy in hindsight, isn't it? Because obviously what unfolded on the pitch with particularly around Callum Chambers, unfortunately, was that made it look a bad selection. But I think the problem we've got on Wednesday is still the defence, in my view, because I think we can make changes in midfield. So you'd expect Tielemans to start, I would have thought. I think there's a possibility even Dendoncker might start alongside him, or maybe at least one of Kamara, who's maybe sort of played the first half. And again, I think in terms of wide plays, you'd expect Leon Bailey to come in. I would expect Duran to start, and I think those kind of decisions make sense, don't they? I mean, Ramsey, probably needs some game time, so you think he'd start. McGinn seems to be playing every game, although not finishing games. So I think, again, he came off yesterday, didn't he, on sort of 70 minutes. So I wouldn't be surprised if he captained the side again. So I think like that midfield up front, that's all good, isn't it? And if you rest Watkins, fine. You can live with that. I think the problem we've got at the moment is maybe that back four, and not just in terms of whether we give people a go or not. I think obviously people are injured, aren't they? I mean, it looks like Moreno's had a bit of a setback, so therefore you're thinking, well, either Luca Dean's playing again, or potentially Torres maybe plays on the left. Equally, right back. Well, okay, I guess it's Chambers again at right back, or possibly Matty Cash. But then again, you're limited in terms of central defenders. Carlos isn't fit, so again, you're thinking, well, I'd be amazed if Chambers doesn't play, I suppose, is what I'm kind of getting at. And I think you've just got to kind of go with that. That to me is the issue, is the defence. They haven't got a lot of options there, and I think that will be possibly where we might see some issues again if they're not, that sort of back four isn't particularly used to playing together. I think it's really interesting, isn't it? And this idea of like the depth of the squad, but there are key players. I mentioned McGinn. I think I'm right in saying, Luke, he's been involved in every game. He didn't start
Yeah.
the second leg against Hibs, did he? But and Ezri Konsa as well. You think, well, probably he's going to have to play either as a right back or a centre back on Wednesday. So there's a lot to balance and manage. But I still think, when that team comes out at 6:45, whatever it is on Wednesday, it will still look pretty strong. And I think that we've just got to accept that possibly, Callum Chambers is going to play in these sorts of games. And actually, all right, the away leg in Warsaw wasn't brilliant, but it wasn't that long ago that we were kind of being a bit more positive about him. Think of the second leg of the Hibs game. I thought he played really well. So yeah, I think that, I don't think we'll see a lot of the kids, for example, maybe Kellyman, I guess, he was on the bench yesterday as well, wasn't he? But I still think there's enough depth there, isn't there, to really beat Everton at Villa Park, whatever he chooses.
Yeah, definitely. And I do watch Everton quite a lot because I watch an Everton fan channel. They've been on our channel, Toffee TV. So I'll just always watch Everton's games. And before the Brentford game, I was very, very worried about them because they just don't play great football. Their system's not great. It's the same team every single week that go out and do exactly the same thing. Onana, Decore, Ghana. Their back four's generally the same. So for me in this game, if we're putting out a strong team and we just go about our business at home, then we should have more than enough to beat Everton, whether Everton are at full strength or not full strength. So I think it's a game that we should be looking forward to, trying to get through to the next round. There is one little negative about this game, and it is the ticket prices. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that. We've got Everton coming. I think Carabao Cup is it 10 or 15%? So they've got the whole of the North stand. And Villa fans sort of, I think the attendance so far is looking at about 29,000. So what were your thoughts on the pricing of these tickets?
It's a real tricky one, isn't it? And I mean, as people may know, I'm not a season ticket holder, unfortunately. I used to be, and I'm not currently. So me and my son are members, so we pay game by game. We're fortunate enough that we can basically go to every game, and we pretty kind of good at getting the tickets sorted and so on. I think that it was just a real shame that the prices were what they are for Everton, because it just seems, again, just a bit of a missed opportunity. And I think that I get it. I mean, the club's a business and so on, but there is a precedent with the European games of having some sort of kind of better packages and better deals. And I think that, again, it's just if we are serious about going deep in competitions and things like that, it would be better if it was in front of a packed out Villa Park on Wednesday. I suspect the attendance might kind of grow between now and then a little bit, and obviously it's on general sale, so anyone can buy a ticket. So I think that people will maybe pick it up. I just think with it as an isolated thing, I think Villa fans probably wouldn't have maybe reacted in the way that they have. But I think because it's a one of a number of kind of commercial missteps that the club have perceived to have made. I think that's the problem. So when you add it into the whole suite going and the terrace view conversations and all this sort of thing, it becomes a kind of a bigger deal. But the reality for match going fans, in fact, whether you're a season ticket holder or not, because you're still having to buy the ticket for Wednesday, is that for some people there is a limit, isn't there? There is a limit on how much you can go and how much you can afford to go, and that, I guess, that's always been the case to a point. I think that my only kind of sort of doubt about it all is that I don't think probably the club are that bothered, because they will still have a sizable crowd on Wednesday. We can't, unfortunately, we can't kind of, question them in that sense. They just, they will make those decisions, and therefore it then comes down to an individual whether you can afford to do that, or indeed want to. I just think it's within that wider narrative at the moment of some of the other things. I think it has become another example of, oh well, the club aren't communicating properly, the club aren't doing things right off the pitch and so on. But I think it will be interesting to see what ultimately the attendance is, because as I say, I think probably people's plans might change over the week. I don't think there's some kind of like massed boycott, is there? Really?
No.
You
No, I mean, I did see that on Twitter. Some people saying, "Don't go," and I'm like, "Come on, get a grip."
Well,
Right,
no,
but
I'm sure someone would say, well, it's all about there's power of the union and all that sort of thing. But the reality is that if you don't buy a ticket, someone else will, and plenty of other people will, and so on. And I think, unfortunately, as I say, it's within that bigger narrative. But then it's interesting that the European packages are great, actually. Like, I mean, the 3-game package is, we sit in the North Stand, and fantastic deal, really. So, I'm pretty sure that wasn't a response to the Everton decision, because the Hibs game was on a similar level. But yeah, one of those. It did make me laugh when Villa, they're obviously trying to sell the tickets, aren't they? And they obviously put an email out saying, this will potentially influence future Carabao Cup, ability to buy tickets and things like that, which I don't think it's particularly worked. I mean, the incentive for the Hibs game was, I think if you remember, like us, and had been to the Hibs second game, you got like 2 days early access to the European games. So it's not, I mean, I don't know. I think they're just clutching at straws a bit there. But
yeah, and I think it probably does sort of, it feels like early on in the season with, money leaving your bank accounts. You might have, as a member, had, all your tickets, season ticket holder, you pay it out in one, or you pay it monthly, and then you've had the Hibs game, then you've had sort of like the Everton game, and then you've had the Euro game. And it's not only the tickets, it's like we've got 3 home games in a row now, which is fantastic. But, that's still going to cost you some money when you're there as well. So, it just sort of like all bubbles up, doesn't it? So, yeah, we have been hit with it recently. But
again, as we said at the start, whatever we might think about the prices, is that ultimately we support a football club that is in a really positive place, on the pitch, and therefore there are going to be more games, and and we want that. So I think we kind of just have to sort of enjoy that. But as I say, everyone is in a different position, isn't it? And I'm sure there are people that will think, well, actually, I can't do that. I mean, it just so happens that we're not actually going to Brighton because my son's got a football match. So actually, you kind of pick and choose, don't you? So actually, he's a bit gutted, but he wants to play for his team. Fair enough. So, that's one less game there. So you think, right, okay, well, we can go to that and so on. So, yeah, it's a real tough one, but this is
life.
well, it is, and possibly the price of doing well, isn't it?
Yeah. And I can understand where people's frustrations come from, etc. And I don't think we've mentioned either the new Holt Suite turning into a venue where you can sort of go unlimited. I think they've used the word unlimited drink and food. So it'd be interesting to see what that's like. And a guest speaker, 60 quid per game. For me, the bad thing about that is it's sort of stopped certain people's match routine of going in there for free as a season ticket holder, enjoying that space before a game. I think that's probably one of the biggest negatives for me to come of it. But I actually think that one is kind of, I think it might be quite a good idea, I deep down, I mean, it's not for me. Like, I would never go in there. I would never pay 60 quid to go and listen to somebody. But as a one-off, that might be quite a good experience for some people, and they might get a lot out of it. And it's, it's something
Yeah,
different. They're being a bit creative. The
I
worst
think
part
you're right.
about it is it's
Sorry, go
like
on.
you could go in there for free and you could enjoy with your friends and family and whatever that space before. I think to get rid of it on that sense is, it's horrible. But as a one-off for £60, I think a lot of people would get value in that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, this is, I can imagine some comments underneath this later on about this, but I mean, it's a real difficult issue, isn't it? And I think that the club is right to explore its corporate hospitality options. I think the issue for Villa fans is that they are coming at a cost of any general type admission facilities. So, by taking the whole suite away, you are removing that, or albeit for season ticket holders, but a general admission, place where people could go before the game, which is what they want to encourage. They want people to be around Villa Park and all this sort of thing. So you're sort of taking that away. So we're, from a general admission point of view, unless you're a family with young kids and you want to go in the kind of inflatable place, is that you sort of hang around outside the Trinity Road stand, which is, as someone else said recently, you just stood outside, So I think it's fine if the club want to explore this stuff. And obviously it's an income generator and all those sorts of things. But I think it's the fact that the facilities for the general fan who maybe don't want to or can't access that sort of higher level, soft hospitality, it's rubbish. As I said, I sit in the north stand. I mean, it's ropey in there. I mean, like proper ropey. I mean, don't get. I mean, I know they're going to knock it down, but I mean, if you want to drink at half time, the concourses are so narrow. I mean, we just don't bother anymore, like going down at half time, And so I think that's the issue for a lot of fans is that whilst they understand, and I agree, it might be quite nice to go in there and hear from whoever, or sit in the 1888 seats and get your club tie, whatever you get, as a one-off. But I think it's when that's at the perceived cost of just the general facilities for fans, and I think that's where the club have made a bit of a misstep. I think, But
Yeah, me too. Anyway, get yourself down the Aston Social if you want to go. I mean, I absolutely love it in there. I do before the game. It's great. I love it. I mean, it's just a great vibe in there. There's atmosphere. It's busy, and
and that's and that's great, isn't it? And I think the new, the Witten Arms has been refurbished. Looks really good as well. And those options, are there, aren't they? I suppose it's just, it's a shame from the club's point of view that essentially they are, they're therefore, sending people elsewhere rather than, into say the Holt Suite or wherever. But it's a real controversial issue.
It's very sketchy for me to talk about it on here because quite a lot of people watch it and you say the wrong thing and it's like I'm having him.
Absolutely, and it is, and I think it is quite a divisive thing. It's like when the first game of the Terrace View, and people were obviously kind of, Villa fans were shouting at other Villa fans in the Terrace View, and you think, well, like, I don't know, that's a bit mad to me. Like we're all Villa fans. Like, I mean, I couldn't afford the Terrace View, but if someone can, and they get a season ticket, then I don't wish them ill. And I think again, it's that sort of that bit of animosity towards the club in general, about kind of these various decisions. But it's as I say, I'm sure that there'll be some comments underneath this video later.
But the thing is, as well, it's like, it's good to get everybody's opinion on it and get everybody's thoughts on it. I'll try and come at it from a balanced vibe and a balanced view, and even the Terrace View, like my friend Kieran, he's now sitting in the new disabled Holt End section, so he's in the Terrace View, and he's saying to me that the Terrace View is absolutely rammed in there. So the fact of the matter is, people want to go in there and people are prepared to spend their money in there. So of course, the club are going to be like, hold on a minute, they're enjoying this, and they want to, create more areas, etc. So
Well,
it's
yeah, and I
supply
mean,
and demand, isn't it?
well, it is, and if you have a waiting list of however many it is now, 30,000 people for a season ticket, any club is going to be thinking, right, there's 30,000 people, well, technically that have said they want a season ticket. What can we do to let some people jump that queue? And that's essentially what the terrace view has allowed people to do. And you know what? Like, I mean, I looked at it. I basically couldn't afford it for me and the boy. And but if I could have done, I wouldn't have had some sort of moral difficulty with it. I'd think, well, great. Like, you're never going to please everyone, are you? You're never going to
No.
please everyone. And I think that, but again, it goes back to the point we've made all through this, is that because we, as on the pitch, if you like, are in a good place, there is more interest. There is, people want to go, people want, and to enjoy that. And I think that, we've got to kind of roll with that, really. But yeah, I do think it's just on the whole suite. I think it's what was quite interesting is they've called it the lower grounds suite now, haven't they? Which obviously harks back to kind of what was there before Villa Park, and I think that's quite interesting as well. Sort of that play on the heritage stuff is kind of interesting, but and again though goes against that kind of general sort of admission thing, and so I think that's quite an interesting one. So not sure who came up with that, but yeah, we'll see.
And I mean, they do. I mean, we've covered this before anyway. But for anyone that's going to be shouting at the screen, we do think that the general experience of every fan needs to improve in the ground as well. So I think that's something that massively needs to be looked at as well. So Ivan, I'll get a score prediction then. What are you going with?
I'm going for a Villa win on penalties.
Do you know what? I was going to go with the exact same thing. I think it's going to be 1-1 and we win on penalties.
No, I think maybe a bit of a higher score draw, maybe a 2-2. But yeah, and then Villa win on penalties. I think it's not going to be as straightforward as the Premier League game was, which was very straightforward. And as I say, I think that with our few changes, I think they want to build momentum. I think that maybe a bit of a kind of seesaw game. I mean, Villa aren't particularly having a problem scoring goals, are they? It's just possibly at the other end, with the exception of yesterday. So, but yeah, I'd fancy a nice penalty shootout win. That's always good, isn't it?
Your son will love that, because kids love penalty shootouts, don't they? For some reason,
he does.
They just love them.
So like one of his first kind of Villa memories, really, or sort of knowing memories, was that the playoff semi-final against West Brom, and that penalty shootout, and Jed Steer giving Mason Holgate the eye, and then Jedinak, and then it is. I mean, they're great, aren't they? As long as you win them, I think.
Definitely. Cool. Yeah. Right, we'll end it there then. So thanks for coming on, Ivan, and we'll be back with the predicted lineup. Up the Villa.
Cool. Up the Villa, mate.